I know y'all been over to the courts, so some of this might be a little bit of a refresher, but I thought what I'd do today is tell you a little bit about what we do and what we've been doing in the DA's office. And so some of it might ring a bell from some of the things you heard in the Justice Center, but I'm honored to be over here in the Sheriff's Department. Y'all have a very good sheriff and Sheriff Matt Lindeman. So I'd known Sheriff Lindeman for a long time, and his deputy chief or assistant chief, I can't remember what the name is, but the number 2 in charge, Randy Traylor, also was an investigator in my office for about 19 years. So we have a great sheriff's department, great people working all the way down to the people that answer, the phones in the lobby. So I think one of the reasons I like to do this is because you kind of get to see you heard the court side of it, and I will get back into the court side, but there's also an important process that takes place over here too when people get arrested and how that process goes through the system. So I've been your DA for about 8 years, a little over 8 years. I was elected back in 2016. I took office January 1st of 2017. And so I've been in this position ever since then. If you notice, my title is actually the DA for the 26th Judicial District. So and you've said, well, wait, I thought you were the Williamson County DA. Well, I am. The 26th Judicial District just encompasses all of Williamson County. So there are DAs that cover 5 counties. There are DAs that cover 1 county. There's actually 2 DAs that cover 1 county up in San Angelo. So that's just the way the districts were drawn. One of the interesting parts about our job is we're one of the few entities that have in statute codified what our duty is. And you will hear prosecutors use this term all the time, to see that justice is done. That's our mission, that's our calling, that's what we thrive on, seeing justice done. And it seems simple because it seems like it's one unified mission. We're all seeing that justice is done, right? What does justice mean? Sometimes justice looks a little bit different to different people. So I think the part of the statute that sometimes gets forgotten is the second sentence that says that, well, first of all, our duty is not to convict. Our duty is to see that justice is done. But we also can't hide things. We can't cheat to get there. And I think sometimes that second sentence is not as recognizable or noticed, but I always highlight that to the prosecutors and staff in my office to accomplish this mission. So in Williamson County, we are a little bit different. There are 4 or 5 different flavors of district attorney. There are criminal district attorneys that handle, strangely, everything in the county, even civil stuff, but they're called criminal district attorneys. I, on the other hand, am a district attorney, and all I handle pretty much are felonies or anything related to felonies. And so on this, I'm colorblind, but I always think it's yellow at the bottom, right? 6, 7, and 8. So my office handles everything from 5 and above. And so once you get to a state jail felony, our responsibility in some ways is very simple. Every felony that takes place in Williamson County, that's what we're responsible for. If it's a misdemeanor, our county attorney is responsible for that, and I think y'all got to meet Dee last week. And he also handles juveniles that kind of cross all of these punishment ranges. But if a juvenile is certified to stand trial as an adult, welcome, Sheriff. If they're certified to stand trial as an adult, then we would handle a juvenile once they're transferred to adult court. This just gives you an idea of some of the entities and agencies that our office works with on a regular basis. I was originally started my career in Houston and Harris County. And pretty much you've got the Houston Police Department and the Harris County Sheriff's Office. There are some smaller PDs, but the dominant filers, the dominant people that the DA's office interacts with were those 2 entities. Williamson County, as you know, is very different. We have a lot of big cities and a lot of small cities. And there's not one city that's bigger or more dominant than another. And so we deal with a lot of different entities on a regular basis. And to do that, I've got an office structure that involves me, the district attorney, my first assistant underneath me. We have 4 different divisions. We have an intake division, which I want to come back to in a little bit. And they're kind of the screening mechanism for what comes into our office. Then you have our trial division, and how many of y'all watch Law and Order or have ever watched Law and Order? Okay. Law and Order is really what the trial division does. They work on cases, they get it into court, they negotiate in a courtroom, and then they try cases. The appellate division, they don't like when I say this, but I always used to joke when I was in trial division, I'm in sales, I'm not in warranty. And so trial is the sale, but unless you can make the sale, you don't need a warranty, right? But once we convict people, then our appellate division comes in to make sure that those convictions are upheld and that we did everything correctly. And then I have a general counsel division, civil division, and they handle, as they like to say, all other duties unassigned. But they handle a lot. Open records requests, non-disclosures and expunctions, two different versions of sealing up someone's record or clearing their record. They also handle bond forfeiture. So if someone jumps bond, we can go after the money and sue the money and give that money back to the general fund of the county. We also do asset forfeitures. A lot of times we'll do that in conjunction with the sheriff's department. And I know asset forfeiture is always a little bit of a touchy point. Some people don't like it at all. Some people think it's great. But I'll just give you the real life example that we have. I mean, I was in office 2 weeks, and we had 2 women stopped on the freeway coming back from Dallas, headed back down to the valley. And they were stopped with over $150,000 in cash in the car. And then they told the deputy that had pulled them over, yeah, we just dropped off our load of drugs in Dallas and we're taking this money back to the cartel in Mexico. Now, what are we supposed to do with that money? Just go, okay, well, let's just give it to the cartel. Let's give it to the 2 ladies and let them hire lawyers, to defend themselves. No, if they're illegal proceeds, we're allowed to sue the money. And that's what happens in an asset forfeiture case. And we sue the money based on its criminal content. And when that money is secured after a lawsuit, that money is then divided up by agreement. We give 80% of the proceeds back to the police department, and we'll keep 20% in our office. And so when we do that, you can only use that money for things like training or equipment. And so oftentimes, like I've bought some equipment for the Georgetown Police Department. We've made donations to our Children's Advocacy Center, things like that. So that's what that money is used for. Criminal justice, I like to give this example because it's the way I learned it in law school. And I think it's really true. If you think of the criminal justice system, it's like a funnel. And it was never designed to be a cylinder. So in other words, not every case in the world that happens goes right through to the bottom, right? There's a filtering process all the way down. Now, why do I start with this? All criminal thought and conduct. So let's just take Williamson County to make it small and a little more manageable. There's a lot of people here in Williamson County, probably more than we think, that are thinking about committing a crime, right? But why don't they commit a crime?
Because of the laws and repercussions.
Because of the laws and repercussions. We hope that our criminal justice system has a deterrent effect. We hope that by having sheriff's deputies patrol the streets, that people think twice before they commit a crime. Now, that doesn't happen for everybody, and there's some science that says, especially for juvenile males from about 16 to 24, that frontal lobe that tells you to stop and don't do some dumb things isn't quite developed yet. But that's what we want to do. We want to deter part of crime. It was once said, and I don't believe this is true in Williamson County, but nationwide it was said that 49% of people, sorry, I take that back, 51% of people don't report a crime that happens to them. 51%. So what that means is more people prefer nothing than the criminal justice system, right? Now that's nationwide. I don't believe that's true here. And I think it's my job to make sure that you have faith in our system, because our system is not going to work if our communities don't have faith in what we do and what the police departments do. So it's my job to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the DA's office and the criminal justice system. So there are crimes that are reported to the police, but after those crimes are reported to the police, not all cases are then sent over to the district attorney's office. Sometimes the police just determine that they're going to close the case. Sometimes there's not even enough evidence to bring the case over to talk to us. So again, you're whittling down how many cases are out there. Then we receive cases, and we present those cases to a grand jury for an indictment. So again, some of those cases don't make it through that grand jury process. And then finally, you're in court, and there's ways that we dispose of most cases through plea agreements. If we literally, we review about 3,500 felonies a year. We only have about 36 trial weeks a year. So there's no way we could try all 3,500 cases that get submitted to our office every year. And in Texas, really less than 1% of all cases go to a jury trial. But a jury trial is sort of the barometer that tells us how the community feels about our cases. What happens if you don't have sort of these valves? I like to think of each part of the funnel having this valve. What happens if you close off all the valves, or you just don't have enough room and you just let the flow of crime continue into the funnel? So it's really important that we have mechanisms throughout the system to appropriately manage the disposition of cases. And I don't always like to talk about numbers, but I think it's important to let you know kind of what these numbers really mean. So how do we manage that flow? When I took office in 2017, there was no organization here. We were a pretty big county, but we weren't quite the mid-major county we are right now. But police officers just used to file cases and leave them there in the office, and someday somebody would get around to looking at it, or maybe someday the police would send the case over to the DA's office. And we put an end to that. We started an intake division. And what the intake division is my most senior lawyers with a lot of experience judging what happens on a case from the very beginning. They know cases that are good, bad. What cases can we clear immediately? Or what do we need to do to make the case that we're looking at today better? So we actually review every arrest in Williamson County, every felony arrest in Williamson County within about 18 hours of someone being arrested. In the old days, that might be you might look at it 6 months later. You might look at it 2 years later. But we want to review every arrest within 18 hours. In that time, we decline some of those cases. And what that means is that someone doesn't sit in jail overnight. They don't get a court-appointed lawyer. They can get returned to their job and keep their job. And so the hard part is figuring out which of these cases and people need to be in our jail and which of these people need the chance to go back or their case isn't good. And in doing that, we were able to drop the jail population significantly. And this just gives you an example of how much it cost to keep people in jail. And in the first couple years alone, we were saving the county over $7 million. To give you an idea, my current budget is $7 million. So when we save jail space, you're actually saving the county money, but you're also allowing the jailers, the correction staff, to more appropriately deal and handle with the inmates that we do have here, because there are people that belong in our jail and they are here, and you may get to hear them at some point today. Just to give you an idea of the numbers of cases that we handle, this is just a little snapshot that tells you in that year, this is the number of each type of those cases that we were handling. So child sexual assault cases, we had 326. We had 33 murders or capital murders pending. We had 15 homicides. Other homicides, those are usually like racing cases or hit and runs. 144 ag robberies. So you're going to think to yourself, wow, what kind of county do we live in, right? Well, part of this is, the more difficult cases to resolve stay around longer. So your murder cases, we don't get 33 murders a year. But unfortunately, we're starting to get about 15 to 20 a year. And so some of those are holdovers from the previous year. But keep in mind, we have almost 750,000 people in Williamson County now. So while these numbers look bad when you're just looking here, truthfully, we have a very safe community and a very safe county. But this is all we see as prosecutors. And a lot of people like to have the rumor, oh, the DA doesn't prosecute any drug cases. Well, that's not true. We have plenty of drug cases that we prosecute as well. We also look for rehabilitation opportunities and diversion, but we do prosecute drug cases. But my priorities are murders, rapes, robberies, burglaries, and any case that involves a gun. One of my new intolerances, and it's really since COVID, is this like road rage or just what I call crimes of disorder. We've all had a lot less grace with each other. We've all been a lot more argumentative with each other. But when you pull out a gun to resolve those issues, I have very little tolerance for that. So what do we do with our cases? This just gives you an idea. Before I took office, the DA's office over that 4-year span tried 26 jury trials. In the first 4 years, that included about a year and a half of COVID. In my first term, we tried 40 jury trials. And coming out of COVID, we were able to try 45 jury trials in the previous 2 years. And that gives you the numbers of the types of cases that we prioritize. And so not only are they our priorities, but those are the priorities on cases that we try as well. Actually, adult sexual assaults is now tied for burglary habitation. So we've actually tried adult sexual assaults at a much higher clip than most people. What happens to a lot of those cases? Well, all the other cases that we resolved in that period from 2017 to May of 2023, we sent 1,776 people to prison for a total of over 12,696 years in prison. And that doesn't include a state jail offense that people go to prison for 6 months to 2 years. And those are usually lower level drug crimes, criminal mischief, burglary of a building, things like that. And then this is just a sampling of the jury trials we tried this year. And this is the previous year, just a small sampling of some of the cases we tried. So we try a lot. We try anything from money laundering, drug cases, to child sexual abuse, to murder, to capital murder. What are some of the issues that are affecting the DA's office? Well, how many of you even know the name Michael Morton? Okay. And so there is a law named after a case that happened in our county called the Michael Morton Act. And it requires the way that DA's offices need to turn over discovery. The truth is, we should have been doing this for a very long time, a prosecutor statewide. But finally, a law was passed, I want to say in 2014, that requires us to turn over the evidence that we have in a case to defense lawyers, all evidence, which is a great, great thing. The problem is it's just a lot of evidence. And so we've kind of become data managers as opposed to lawyers. The Heath decision was something that came out recently. I'm actually at the legislature now trying to fight to fix this bill. But there was a ruling in a court that basically said if the prosecutors didn't turn something over to the defense quick enough, that the judge could suppress it. So we have a child abuse case that the phone sat in the police department for a long time, and then when we set the case for trial, my prosecutor's like, oh, we actually have the defendant's phone at the police department. We need a search warrant, and we need to search the phone. And on the defendant's phone, we found child porn, and we found pictures of the children that he was abusing. We had a visiting judge come here and suppress that evidence based on the Heath decision, because he said, well, it sat in the police department for a long time. So there is a fairness to the system, and I very much believe in fairness to both the defense and the state. Sometimes the state gets forgotten in that process. So one of my jobs is also to try to go advise the legislature and see if we can fix some of these laws. So just to give you an idea, I have 26 lawyers total in my office. And at any given point, we have 1.15 pieces of million pieces of digital evidence. It could be a video, it could be an audio tape, it can be an offense report, or it could just be one picture. But 1.15 million pieces of evidence that we're now responsible for reviewing, making decisions on, and also making sure we've given all of those 1.15 million pieces to the defense. How do we do that? Well, in Williamson County, we have 3 district courts. This is the same system we've had since 1989. We have 3 district courts that hear criminal cases, and they all also hear something else. So they don't just hear criminal, they'll hear criminal and civil or criminal and juvenile. And so we have, and I call them part-time, they don't like that term because they work full-time. But for us, we have 3 part-time criminal district courts. Fortunately, in this last commissioner's session, we've agreed to add a district court. And again, we're down at the legislature. It's the legislature that has to add the court, but it is already in the bill to be passed. And so we should be getting a 4th district court starting October 1st here in Williamson County. And what does that do? It may not seem like a big deal, but instead of each prosecutor handling 500 cases a year, think about 500 cases and you've got millions of pieces of evidence you've got to look through. To drop that to 375 cases per prosecutor is a big deal. It means you're going to get better justice in our system, and we're going to be able to review cases even better than we do right now. It also gives us the opportunity to try more cases because when the court's not busy with us, they're busy on something else, or we have docket days where we try to resolve cases and work out cases. You probably heard from the judges. I don't want to just say all we do is put people in prison, because that's not true either. I believe very strongly in rehabilitation. For those that we can rehabilitate and help, I support these programs very, very much. And so we let defendants enter a DWI court program. And if you've ever seen a person that went into the program and watched them come out, it's night and day. And it's a remarkable change. And in some ways, it's what probation should do in every case. They just don't have the resources to do it. So we want to make sure, rather than just put someone, cycle them back through a prison system for a couple years, then they get out and they're more likely to be drunk driving again. We want them to get treatment and help, and we put them through the DWI court, and it allows us to lower their sentence and give them more opportunities in life. We also have a mental health docket where we take all the mental health cases with severe mental health issues and have all the same people with all the same resources in the same court. We also use the Veterans Court. And then really my favorite, it's kind of started by Judge Matthews and I, so it's kind of our baby. And it's a transformative justice court that we put 17 to 24-year-olds into this program. It's non-violent, non-victim related cases. But they get the opportunity to go through education training, job training, life skills, drug treatment if they need it. And when they successfully complete this program, their case is dismissed and their record is expunged. And so we believe very strongly in giving people a second chance. My real wish list is one day I'd love to have a real dedicated drug court and an inpatient drug treatment center that people don't have to be convicted of to go to it, because that felony conviction sometimes prevents you from doing things in life. And so having a drug problem and a felony conviction makes it that much more difficult. But right now, we just don't have the resources to have a full dedicated drug court. 2 quick things. If you ever really want to see how my office operates or know the people in my office, there was a Showtime documentary about a real life story. How many people have heard of Greg Kelly? Nobody. Interesting. Okay. So the longer we've been here, the less people know about Michael Morton, Greg Kelly. But these are cases that came out of Williamson County that had to do with potentially wrongful convictions. So Greg Kelly was a football player in Leander. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison after a trial for molesting a little boy. And when I took office, his lawyer brought us a petition saying, "You got the wrong guy." And so the outcry literally documents the whole process from kind of beginning to end. And so if you're just one of those people who loves to watch crime documentaries, feel free to watch it. Also, if you want to know a little bit more about me, there's a book through our National District Attorneys Association. They asked me to author a chapter in the book related on how diversion programs work and what resources we use to divert people from the criminal justice system. So that's a little bit about me, our office. I do have some brochures up here if you want to take one. I've got my cards if you want to reach out to me. But with that, I'll take any questions or yes.
Who certifies a juvenile as an adult?
So Judge Matthews is our juvenile judge.
She decides.
Yes, and there's a process. So the way that works is the juvenile has to be evaluated by psychologists, and then his defense lawyer can put on a case, and they have to kind of prove that not only is the crime one that should be certified, but that juvenile himself, that no more services in juvenile can suffice, and that he's really of a mature enough age and mental status to be certified as an adult. And then the judge hears that. It's like a mini trial. The judge hears it, and then she makes a determination whether to certify them or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So you showed us numbers that were kind of volumes that go through the system. But what do you look at? What's the three things, plus or minus one, that are metrics of success? Like your department is doing well.
So, the first thing is kind of funny. It's a weird metric, but it's like the absence of bad news. So I have a lot of people that say, oh, you're doing a great job. I'm like, how would you know? How do you know? They're like, we never hear any bad press about you, right? So it's kind of a weird metric, but it's hard. The metrics that I use, I try to look at numbers, but I also just try to look at just results, because if I focus too much on numbers, no one does this job for numbers. But I don't know any other good way to learn metrics. So I do watch the jail population to make sure it doesn't climb too high. I do watch our what trials we're choosing to try and what our success rate is on those trials. So we're going to convict 98% of people in a trial. We are going to lose some trials from time to time. But I don't know that it's worth our time to try cases we know we're going to lose. And so I keep an eye on that too. There are some people that deserve a trial, and there needs to be a trial. But when you only have 12, trial weeks in a court a year, those are kind of precious to us. So I look at that, and then I also just look at feedback from the local bar and our judges on how they feel like our prosecutors are doing in a court. I do surveys with our grand jurors, so every grand jury we have, I'll give them a survey to let me know how our people are doing at the end of that. So those are some things I look at. Success really is individual. So for me, watching someone graduate from the Transformative Justice Court, you watch one kid graduate from that court, it feels very successful. The recidivism rate for juveniles before we started this, like 16 to 24-year-olds, was 83, 85%. So even if our transformative justice program were to reach a 50% recidivism rate, that's a lot of success. So that's why a lot of it's relative. And truthfully, my biggest measure, everything I measure by is, are we professional? Do we have integrity? Do we maintain the integrity of our cases and our system? And so that's vital and important to me, but there's no metric you can put on that.
Is there anything we can look at to determine how well we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, courts are open all the time. So you're welcome to come sit in a courtroom and watch us interact. We do try to issue press releases when things of note happen in our office. And I think we're working with the county to sort of get up metrics and dashboards. The problem is stats only mean something if you can kind of put them relative to something else. So I can show you a lot of stats, but you don't really know what it's related to. So that's why I like to do it in presentations, so that you can ask these questions and I can explain what it is that we do. Yes, sir.
How's your turnover?
Pretty good. Since COVID, it's created more problems. And then, I don't know, people like the sheriff leave my office to go be the sheriff. And, my chief investigator leaves to come over here too. So a lot of times when we're losing somebody, we're losing them to another position like that. But our turnover rate's actually been really good. And when I say really good, it's been very low. I've had a lot of people consistent in our office, but our office has grown from 33 employees to 55 employees in the 8 years I've been here. We probably could have used 50 employees 8 years ago. And with the new court, we're going to add 8 new people. So we'll be up at 63 people. So we have a lot of new faces, but it's not because we've had a lot of people leave. I value experience. The average years of experience for our lawyers is well over 20 years. Our investigators probably combined have almost 150, 175 years in law enforcement. So I value experience probably above most things. So, all right, thank you.